Skeletal King, Report 1. Fragments of Ether. The world unfolds like a lotus. What now, say you, as the intangible reaches to embrace you? Oh, the beauty, incomprehension, the stunning magnificence of everything I see. The Skeletal King is an existence that lives in the borders that divide our world from the next. It is a conceptual existence, one that personifies a key concept of our reality. The creature shares traits with such beings like the Black Crown, the Blind Judge, and various others. But there's a difference. The king is very much like the Black Crown. They both take hosts, and eventually their features will overwrite the host's prior form. Unlike the Black Crown, the king doesn't consume the person's personality and soul. This avatar representing wisdom is a symbiotic existence. A person must be willing to make the sacrifice to host the old king. They do so by willingly donning the symbol of the king, his crown. The crown of the king, a bone-white circlet of no real identifiable features. Once willingly worn, the circlet will sink into the skull of the wearer, and the world will unfold to the user, and they'll begin to see the nature of things, not the truth. The truth is rather simple at the end of the day. What they gain is much more potent. The host begins to notice the directions, the flows of life and death, the relationship between humanity and the ethereal, and the gentle balance that keeps things spinning. What happens is that the host of the Skeletal King begins to understand. And as they understand, as they begin to sort through the threads of reality, their body begins to change and adjust. Because with the wisdom granted by the king, it's very hard to stay human. Often the host's face will vanish because they start to see no need for an identity, at least not the one they had before. Skulls, like skin, flakes away without pain, and their bones reshape themselves. This understanding of the universe starts to let the universe understand the host. Such a thing will cause the universe to start supporting the existence of the host. So food and drink no longer become required but optional. And the crown forms over their brow with long spikes that go into infinity, reaching into not just the limits of our reality, but emerging into others. From interviews with prior hosts, they could actually undo the changes to become human again, even with the king whispering into their ears. But they all ask the same thing. Why would they? Because at the point where they're at, their thinking has grown and expanded so much that they think like the Skeleton King. So their dual voices that the host starts with eventually merge into one. And it seems that downing the crown and gaining the king's wisdom does grant unusual properties to the host. Not just the ability to speak to anything living, but regular and anomalous, but to understand them, to know their desires and why they were brought to this world. And the knowledge it rapidly acquires makes the king skilled in many, many things. But for the mundane and of the occult, the king can learn the purpose of all who it gazes upon. And somehow that translates into indestructibility. Nothing can seem to actually hurt the king. Either it moves just so that it misses them, or it'll let it splash and do zero damage to the host body. Just because the king is wise doesn't mean it's on the side of humanity. The being, even formerly being a human, is strictly neutral. It is by unknown whims that the king helps or hurts. Its aid is all dependent on what it sees going on. And what it sees isn't just the present, the past, the present, the future. The Skeletal King sees and lives all such things at once. Non-linear perception makes it hard for the king to actually pay attention to the present day, because even as it stays still, its mind's eye is exploring the universe at large. This stillness can last for an unknown amount of time. Days, months, even sometimes years will go by without it making a motion, only to get up and randomly heal the person, and then the next year track that person down and take their life. King's behavior is random, but it always has a reason to act, one it doesn't share, but seems to be important to it. And in rare moods, one can approach the king as it's meditating and ask questions. Like other things, sometimes it'll answer, and sometimes that answer will be the truth, and sometimes the answer will be a well-concealed lie, one so convincing that the person won't be able to tell he was lied to. The Skeleton King will at one point in its meditation eventually take off its face. The crown and that host will die soon after that. It tends to be at the end of the host's natural lifespan. It won't keep a host longer than that. After that, the crown will vanish and appear somewhere else in the world. There have been times when the king decided to take off the mask early, but it tends to turn out that the reason they do that is to transport the mask to the next host. It's a rare occurrence, but the king must have felt the person needed the crown right there. The person who takes the crown early will eventually revert to human, but with their inhuman thinking, they tend to pass off fairly quickly, having starved themselves to death during weeks-long meditation, because they no longer have the indestructibility that the crown provided them, though the knowledge they retained as the king will stay with them. The hard part is convincing them to part with it, because if they can't be convinced, not even torture will open their lips. If the new host of the crown decides to not put the gifted crown on willingly, the original will place it on themselves again, disappointed, but will respect the person's choice to not become the host. There have been multiple occasions that the agency has gotten their hands on the crown to keep others from wearing it and turning into the Skeleton King, but something happens and the crown vanishes from our contained unit. Currently, the Skeleton King is active. They are meditating in the northern Canadian forests.